Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a project update video for this Armortek radio-controlled 1/6 scale early production German Tiger 1. It's been a while since I've had any project updates for this particular build, namely because I had a few other commission builds that were on the docket that needed to have been completed before I was able to focus my efforts on this build that you see here. With those builds out of the way, this build here will be my next real build focus until this model ends up being completed. So updates for this build are going to start coming at a lot more rapid rate than previously showcased. Since the last video update, a lot of progress has been made to the model's interior, and the equipment is now ready for installation into this build. We'll be going over these additions in this video. Now it is at this point of the model where I can focus on the interior mounts for the equipment. This is a very important piece that needs to be done to these radio control tanks. More specifically, this is very important for that of German World War II tanks for the simple reason that, unlike a T-34 or a Sherman in which the bottom of the hull is totally flat and smooth, on a German World War II tank such as the Tiger or the Panther, in which you have the interleaved torsion bar suspension, the bottom plate is not accessible for mounting of equipment due to the fact that you have torsion bars running on the inside portion of the hull. Now, on all of my German tank builds, I usually mount all of the equipment on a subfloor. For the subfloor, I use the same method as I do on my other builds, which is comprised of lengths of aluminum angle as well as Lexan polycarbonate plastic. The subfloor is mounted to the tank via fasteners, which are currently in the process of being assembled, with that of columns which elevate the subfloor just over these torsion bars, and there's absolutely no contact between the equipment subfloor and the swing arms themselves. If there is contact with these two components, that will lead to suspension issues, as it will refrain the suspension from articulating properly. So a lot of care must be exhibited at this point here of the build. So far, the subfloor is completely fabricated, and also fabricated is that of the battery tray, which is quite visible here in this scene. Now, as for the battery tray, this is integrally a part of the subfloor, and the battery tray serves two functions. First, it obviously acts as a way to mount the batteries to the vehicle in a secure manner. The second objective of the battery tray is that it also gives some rigidity to the subfloor due to the way the angles are bolted to the piece. It really prevents the piece from yawing and bending. Now, as for the battery mounting method, this is facilitated with this single strap here of Velcro. The Velcro is a method that I've been using on my recent builds, as it is a very effective way at keeping everything firmly in place, and is one that is also very user-friendly and does not require a whole lot of complications for that of the mounting. I just simply loosen the strap, and the batteries can lift off of their mount. With the batteries removed, you can see the entire subfloor. The Lexan and all the angle supports are fastened to each other with that of fasteners with the use of Loctite. Once everything is torqued down into place, it is a permanent bond. As you can see, currently the protective wrap on the polycarbonate is still present. This is just to protect it during the construction phase. Just prior to the installation of this piece to the tank itself, the protective covers will be removed. And here's the subfloor temporarily fitted into the tank, and you can see exactly how it's going to be mounted into the vehicle's hull. As you can see, unlike the last Tiger 1 that I did, in which the subfloor ran throughout pretty much the entire length of the lower hull, on this model here, it starts at this point here and moves its way forward. The reason for that is that this area here is going to be devoted to another feature, which will be discussed in another upcoming video. Now, a common question I usually get is, why use this medium for the use of the subfloor when you could use something like wood or something like aluminum plate? The reason for the use of Lexan is that the Lexan does offer a lot of advantages compared to the other mediums. First and foremost is availability. I have a lot of access to get the Lexan. Another benefit is that it's also very, very strong. In addition to being strong, it's also equally very lightweight. And even though this is a very heavy model, once fully built and completed, saving a few ounces with certain components does lend itself, as it's less work that the motors have to haul during the tank's operation. Another advantage that being clear material has compared to the other type of materials is that since it is clear, you have perfect view of these torsion bars for use of maintenance. If there's ever an emergency or any type of issue were to ever arise with the torsion bars, you can quickly visually see exactly what is the issue and exactly how to deal with it, as opposed to guessing if the piece was totally opaque, like aluminum or even wood. And here's the lower hull, now ready for the installation of the floorboards. Now, as you can see, the column mounts have now been fitted to the vehicle. Now, as for the column mounts themselves, they're the same fabrication which is done on some of my other builds that I've showcased in video updates in the past. The column mounts are fabricated out of PVC tubes which are filled in with resin, and they are then turned on the lathe. Now, if you notice, the tube itself has a small little cavity on the bottom portion, and it's not on the top. The reason for that has to do with the clearance of the hull-mounted fastener. The fasteners are drilled into lower portions of the hull that were marked on the floorboards that I mentioned earlier. Now, as for the fastener themselves, you'll notice that it is secured to the hull with that of a nut. The reason for that is to aid in construction. In the past, if you don't have the nut present, you will have some kind of a juggling act with trying to get the fastener to stay in place with that of the column support, and then trying to get the floorboard on with the locking nut. It's a bit problematic and can be a headache. Rather than doing that, this method here I developed a little while ago, in which you have the fastener, which is bolted to the tank via a nut. This is held on with Loctite, and right now the fastener is permanently mounted in place and will never fall out. The column support then simply gets slid over the fastener. Now, the larger hole on the bottom here that is machined into the bottom recess of the column support is just so it can clear that of the nut. The piece just drops right in place like so. Now it is a perfect mounting point for that of the fastener, or of the floorboard, which will prevent it from moving around. All of the column supports are machined to exact tolerances with each other, so the floorboard, will, when mounted, will be in a nice level plane. Now, if you notice, this column here, as well as one or two of the other ones, do not have any mounting fasteners. The reason for this has to do with their location. With the battery tray, the way it's designed, in the center portion here, you cannot have a fastener. However, a support is, in my opinion, needed just to hold up the weight of the battery and give it extra support. Now, you cannot have a mounting fastener in this location here. Obviously, with the batteries mounted in, the fastener is going to protrude from the top, and it's going to cause issue when the batteries need to lock on. So rather than having them bolt on, for one or two of the other not essential locations, they are simply silicone to the hull. More than likely, I may or may not add a drop of silicone to the top portions, but it's not really necessary in my opinion, as once all of the other fasteners get bolted down, this portion here will be held firmly in place, specifically once the batteries get mounted. It is at this point now where I can go ahead and get the floorboard ready for installation. To do that, I will simply just slide the unit into place, and with a Sharpie I will mark the locations where the holes need to be drilled out. This again is one of the benefits of having a clear material like Lexan for this application, as obviously with it being clear I can see exactly where the holes need to be drilled, and I don't have to play really that much detective work. Okay, now I have the lower hull ready for the installation of the floorboards. Now, since the last scene, things have changed slightly as I added more in-between fastenerless studs. What happened was, since the last scene, when I went to test fit the panel onto the chassis, I went ahead and noticed that I made a mistake with the length of the bolts as well as the length of the columns. New bolts that were longer were replaced, that of the original ones, and a bunch of new columns were fabricated. The panel now has its protective screen removed, and I'm going to go ahead and install it to the tank. Now the piece should simply just slide directly into its desired location. And there we have it. The panel is now mounted to the hull, and I'm going to go ahead and add on the last of the mounting fasteners, thus completing the installation of the floorboard. And here's the floorboard now fully mounted to the model. As you can see, I went ahead and temporarily mounted the batteries in place with that of the Velcro strap. In a way, they're going to be fitted once the rest of the electronics start flushing out on the interior. In addition to the floorboards, another addition that I made to the model is that of the retention system for that of the idler adjustment fastener. Like what was mentioned in the last video of this build, the idler mount system on the Armortek tanks are fully adjustable, and on their German tanks it's done in a way which is very similar to that of the real vehicle, where you have a large fastener, and by tightening and loosening the fastener, adjusts this yoke, which in turn gives you tension or loosens that of the idler. Now, even though the Armortek system is very nicely done and works very well, one hiccup that it does have on many of their tanks is that, specifically on their Tiger 1, the piece is only held in place with that of the track tension. When the track is fully mounted to the model and is at the correct tension, the force of the track will lock this component directly into the brass bushing which is found on the rear wall. And as long as you have that tension, there's never going to be an issue. However, one problem that can emerge and does emerge periodically is that if the track ever loses tension for whatever reason, namely that if you break link or if you have a derailment of some type, once the track tension is gone, the whole unit can accidentally pivot out of the way, and the fastener will lose contact with the cup and fall inside of the vehicle. When this happens, you do not have the ability to adjust the track tension, and the track tension is now totally unadjustable and is just flopping around on the inside of the model, which leads for a less than ideal situation. Now, on a few of the Armortek builds, namely that on their King Tiger series that they've done, they have this steel plate which bolts onto the rear wall here of the vehicle, and that acts as a way to keep the fastener from ever falling out and wobbling around. Now, normally getting the component back into its location is not necessarily a difficult task. However, when the model is fully built, painted, and weathered, trying to get access into this location here can be very problematic, specifically if you have electronic equipment in the back, or if you even have that of some mild engine interior detailing. To alleviate the issue from ever arising, I went ahead and used my resin set that I have here. This set here I actually developed on the last Tiger 1 that I built. In fact, in that build series, I talk about this exact same component and how it works. Basically, how the system works is that it is a hollow resin cup which utilizes the actual fasteners on the model that hold on the tension axis cover cap, which is found on the outside portion of the vehicle. The way the system bolts to the model is that once bolted on, the cup stays in place and cannot get loose or pop off, no matter how the track tension is tight or loosened on the yoke. Now, before anyone is wondering if the resin is a durable enough material for this application, you have to keep in mind that this portion here does not suffer any sort of stress. As the way the tank is designed, the track tension is always having its force go backwards into the aluminum alloy plate of the vehicle. It's never going forward. The only time it ever does go forward is when the piece just dangles around, and so there's not a whole lot of force in that type of situation, to which the resin can easily take that type of force, which may be exhibited on it when that happens. And here's the axis cap on the exterior portion of the model. Now, the cap you see here is CNC out of aluminum and is stock with the Armortek kit. Now, this does differ from several of their earlier units, namely that of their first generation Tiger, in which these components here were actually made of a cast metal alloy as opposed to the CNC aluminum. Now, currently they are bolted on, so I cannot simply pop them off. Now, the way they are bolted on is the exact same way that is found on the real Tiger 1. On the real Tiger 1, the fasteners for these locations here actually emerged from the hull, and a large nut would have been used to secure this cover plate in place. This is true for the opposite side as well. On the model, when it came time to mounting the cap, the retention cap, since the fasteners emerge outward from the model, it serves both in a way to hold the component in place as well as also benefit that of the detail element, which is true to the real vehicle. And here we have the cap now off to show what it looks like underneath. Now, as you can see, to prevent the retention cap fasteners from falling back into the vehicle if the cap is ever removed, they are actually permanently bolted to the tank. And red Loctite is utilized to prevent these fasteners from ever backing out. Now, in case anyone's wondering, I can possibly add some bodywork in this section here to cover up the hole. However, as you can see, once the cap is added to the model, their locations completely disappear. With the floorboards out of the way and the idler system now completely fixed in place, I can now finish filling out the interior portion with the mechanical equipment. However, I am also going to start filling in the rear hull area with several details in order for it to connect to the smoke system, which will also be added in the next coming videos. And with that, that wraps up this project update video for this Armortek radio-controlled 1/6 scale early production German Tiger 1. If you like this video, stop by and like us on Facebook, where there are more photographs of this build that have been posted, as well as the other builds that have been showcased on the ECA channel. In addition to that, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thanks for watching.